Nowadays, nowadays, people seem to remember things that have long since passed. Maybe it was something that someone said. Maybe it was something that someone did, or that a group of people did, or that a certain type of people did. Thanks to the internet, we can seemingly magically remember things of the past, even if one individual can't. However, some things aren't magically remembered. The Armenian genocide is a great example of this, where as many as 1.5 million Armenians were killed between 1915 and the end of World War I. Despite this calamity taking place so recently, many people still don't even know that this happened, and quite frankly, it's quite unacceptable that they don't. Multiple historians and websites have written on this topic before, and people still seem to have their head in the sands on it. Probably because it's just not as interesting as other 20th century events, like World War II, the Cold War, or even the Holocaust. The reality, though, is that it did happen, even if it was attempted to be covered up and forgotten. The Ottomans, for a long time, held contempt and disapproval of the Armenian population within their empire. The Armenians were viewed as infidels and were subject to unjust treatment, and they had to pay higher taxes as well as having very few political and legal rights. The reason for this is simply because of the religious differences. The Kingdom of Armenia was the first nation to make Christianity its official religion, while the Ottomans were strongly committed to Islam. Despite all the hindrances they received from their Ottoman rulers, the Armenians still thrived and were on average better off financially. This only caused jealousy and fueled the hate they received from the Turkish people. In 1908, the Turkish Revolution took place. The autocracy of the old government was overthrown and was replaced with a parliamentary government, that was far more modern than the previous. The new administration had desired to Turkify their empire, perceiving all Christians and non-Turkish as threats. By the beginning of World War I, the Ottoman Empire had already been weakening for some time when they decided to enter the war. Where they would perform poorly, with high casualties, little success, and when facing desertion, the new government who had taken control less than 10 years prior blamed their failure on the Armenians. April 24th, 1915 marked what many to believe the start date of the Armenian genocide. The Ottoman government ordered the arrest and subsequent execution of hundreds of Armenian intellectuals. The government then ordered all Armenian people to be expelled from their homes and declared all of them, men, women, and children included, to get in line and march towards the Syrian desert. During their march, the Ottomans would indiscriminately kill them, leaving a trail of corpses in the path of their march. The killings were done with swords instead of guns, with the sole purpose of further breaking the Armenian willpower. Those who didn't die to the random attacks would be met with starvation and dehydration, as they were given no food or water. Those who stopped just to rest were also brutally killed. Those who actually made it to the Syrian desert were put into concentration camps where they faced more terror only to be released back into the desert. With the sweltering heat and the lack of food and water, the only thing waiting for them after this was death. The Ottoman government also created killing squads made with the sole intent of liquidating Christians and non Turkish people. These killing squads would do their job in the most brutal and horrifying ways. They would drown them in rivers. They would crucify them and burn the Armenians alive. They would ensure agony and torture as a part of the death that they were granting. In addition to this, the Ottoman government would take children from their families and convert them to Islam. The women were taken to be raped and lived out their lives as slaves in Turkish harems. The homes of the people that were taken away, whether to be raped or part of the marches or any of the other atrocities, were then repopulated with Muslim families. At the beginning of World War I, there were around 2 million Armenians living in the Ottoman Empire. By the end of the genocide, there were less than 400,000 remaining. After the Central Powers lost the war, the Turkish leaders would flee to Germany, where they were promised safe haven from prosecution. However, many Armenians weren't very pleased with the idea of their tormentors getting off scot-free. This directly led to the creation of Operation Nemesis, a plan to assassinate Turkish leaders. This would lead to the day of March 15th, 1921, where Soghomon Tehlirian, a 25-year-old Armenian, would shoot and kill Mehmet Talat Pasha, who was the former Grand Vizier of the Ottoman Empire. Tehlirian would be arrested and tried for murder. However, as many of the people of the time, as well as the German jury, would come to find out of the horrors committed by the Ottomans, Tehlirian would be acquitted by a 12-man jury. Today, the Turkish government still declines the genocide even taking place. Many countries who are allies of Turkey still won't acknowledge the genocide either. In fact, the American government only officially acknowledged the genocide in December of 2019. It's just politically inconvenient for them to do so. Why would a country want to hurt their ability to trade or lose an ally simply by saying something, whether it took place 100 years ago or not, whether that thing just happened? The Armenian genocide was something that was long in the making, fueled by the Turkish hate of Christianity and the jealousy of the wealth of the Armenians. It's terrible just to think about what would end up happening afterwards. The women who were raped, those who died marching in the scorching desert, and to add insult to injury, there are those who still deny the genocide even happening. Imagine if this happened to your people, if they were treated like less than dirt and were raped and murdered, and then on top of that, half the world doesn't even admit to it happening. The wonderful thing is, we don't live in the time of 100 years ago. We live in a world where we can remember things and prevent them from ever happening again.